Centuries ago, Gullveig, a sorceress of unmatched cunning and greed, betrayed the gods during the Aesir-Vanir War. Cast into Asgard's flames, she rose 3 times, her hatred burning brighter with each resurrection. When the gods failed to destroy her, they banished her into the void between realms, hoping her shadow would never return. But shadows never fade completely. Now, a plague of despair spreads across Midgard, with rivers drying and spirits hollowed. In the village of Skalgard, a young warrior named Sten watches helplessly as the sickness claims his sister, Solveig. Desperate to save her, Sten seeks the wisdom of the village seer, Eira, who reveals a chilling truth. Gullveig's dark magic stirs once more, threatening not only his home but the balance of the 9 realms. Welcome to Hugin and Munin Stories. This is our story, The Shadow of Gullveig, a sorceress's revenge. Chapter 1. The Spark of Shadow. The village of Skalgard rested on the edge of the fjordwood, where the air was thick with pine and the cries of gulls carried from the distant sea. It was a place of hard labor and simple joys, where the people lived by the rhythms of the land and the sea. Yet now those rhythms had been silenced. Crops withered, livestock fell sick, and the laughter of children was replaced by uneasy whispers. The sickness had taken hold, one that did not touch the body, but seeped into the spirit, leaving its victims hollow-eyed and listless. Sten sat at the edge of the hearth, staring at the embers as his sister, Solveig, lay motionless on the bed behind him. Her once bright eyes, full of mischief and warmth, now stared vacantly at the wooden ceiling. Her breaths were shallow, as if the life within her was being slowly siphoned away. Sten gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, his knuckles white. He had fought raiders from the north, hunted wolves that prowled too close to the village, and braved the bitter storms that swept down from the mountains. Yet here, in his own home, he was powerless. No blade could cut through the sickness that held Solveig in its grip. The door creaked open and a figure wrapped in a heavy cloak stepped inside. Eira, the village seer, moved with the weight of many winters upon her, but her sharp eyes betrayed a wisdom that seemed ageless. She approached Solveig's bedside, her gnarled hands tracing patterns in the air above the girl. "It is as I feared," Eira murmured, her voice low and grave. "This is no sickness of Midgard. This is shadow magic, ancient and cruel." Sten turned to her, his voice tight with desperation. "How do I stop it? Tell me, seer. What must I do?" Eira's gaze fixed on him, unblinking. "You must walk the path of shadow, Sten. Beyond the fjord wood lies the Shadow Forest, a place where the air is thick with Gullveig's taint. There you will find the source of her curse." Gullveig. Sten frowned, the name unfamiliar to him. "A name of dread," Eira said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She is a sorceress from the days of the Aesir-Vanir War. Odin himself cast her into the flames of Asgard, but she rose again, her hatred unquenched. 3 times she burned, and 3 times she returned, each time more dangerous than before. In the end, the gods banished her into the void between realms. But the void does not hold forever." Sten's stomach churned at the weight of her words. "You're saying she's returned?" "I am saying her shadow moves once more. The gods are occupied with threats in other realms, and so it falls to mortals to stand against her. If you do not act, your sister will be lost, and Skalgard will follow." Sten rose to his feet, his resolve hardening. "Then I will find her and end this curse." Eira's expression softened, though sadness lingered in her eyes. The Shadow Forest is no place for the unprepared. Its paths twist, its air corrupts, and its denizens are born of nightmares. You will need guidance. She reached into her cloak and withdrew a small pendant, shaped like an oak leaf and etched with runes. "This will protect you from the worst of her magic, but only if your will is strong. Remember, Sten, shadows thrive on despair. Hold fast to your purpose. He took the pendant, the metal warm against his calloused palm. As he fastened it around his neck, the sense of calm washed over him, though it did little to ease the weight of what lay ahead. That night, as the village slept, Sten gathered his sword, a pouch of dried provisions, and the pendant Eira had given him. He knelt beside Solveig, brushing a strand of hair from her pale face. "I'll bring you back," he whispered. "I swear it." With that, he stepped into the darkness, the towering trees of the fjordwood swallowing him whole. The path to the Shadow Forest was long and treacherous, but Sten's resolve burned brighter than the fear that nipped at his heels. Chapter 2. The Cursed Forest. The fjordwood fell behind Sten as the forest around him grew darker and stranger. The air thickened, and the distant calls of birds and rustling of leaves faded into an unnatural silence. The Shadow Forest had no boundary stone or marker, it simply began. One moment Sten walked beneath familiar trees, and the next he stepped into a realm that seemed to defy the natural order. The trees here were monstrous, their trunks gnarled and twisted as if writhing in eternal agony. Their blackened branches clawed at the ashen sky, blotting out what little light filtered through. The ground beneath Sten's boots was soft, spongy, and reeked of decay. A faint whisper echoed through the forest, growing louder as he ventured deeper. "Sten. Sten." The voice, soft and haunting, sent chills down his spine. He gripped the hilt of his sword tighter. "Show yourself," he barked, his voice steady, despite the fear prickling at his senses. The whispers stilled, leaving an oppressive silence in their wake. Then, the forest moved. Shapes formed in the shadows, humanoid but wrong. Their limbs were too long, their movements disjointed, and their glowing eyes pierced the darkness like embers. Wraiths, born of Gullveig's magic. The first one lunged. Sten barely raised his sword in time to block the creature's claw-like hand. The force of the blow sent him stumbling back, but he recovered quickly, slashing through the wraith's torso. To his horror, the creature dissolved into black mist, only to reform moments later, its grin wide and unnatural. He swung again, this time aiming for its head. The wraith dodged with an unnerving speed, its laughter echoing as more of its kind emerged from the trees. Sten's heart pounded as he realized he was surrounded. "Shadows cannot be slain as men are," a soft voice spoke from the darkness. A figure stepped forward. A fox, its fur white as snow and its eyes a deep, unnatural gold. It moved with the fluid grace of something not entirely bound to this world. The wraiths hesitated, shrinking back as if repelled by the creature's presence. "Who are you?" Sten asked, his sword still raised. "I am a guide," the fox said, its voice resonating in Sten's mind rather than his ears. "Sent by the one who gave you that trinket around your neck. You tread the path of shadow, but without wisdom, you will not survive." Sten lowered his blade, watching as the fox circled him. "And what wisdom do you bring?" The fox tilted its head, a glint of amusement in its otherworldly gaze. "Shadows thrive on fear and despair, but do not fight them with strength alone. Let the light within you, however faint, shine brighter than their darkness." Before Sten could respond, the wraiths attacked again, their movements more erratic, as though enraged by the fox's presence. This time, Sten fought with focus, his strikes deliberate and precise. When a wraith's claws tore through his tunic, he refused to let the pain take hold, pushing forward with sheer will. The pendant around his neck grew warm, and a faint golden glow emanated from it. As Sten struck the next wraith, it dissolved into mist and did not reform. The other wraiths faltered, their forms wavering before they retreated into the shadows. Sten stood panting, his sword slick with black ichor that vanished as quickly as it appeared. The fox sat calmly nearby, watching. You learn quickly, it said. Good. But your trials have only begun. Sten sheathed his blade, his mind heavy with questions. Why would Eira send you to help me? Because there is more at stake than your village or your sister, the fox replied, its gaze turning serious. Gullveig seeks to unravel the balance of the 9 realms. The plague on your land is but the beginning. If she succeeds, there will be no Midgard left to save. The weight of the fox's words settled on Sten's shoulders. He had set out to save Solveig, but the path before him was far more perilous than he had imagined. Then tell me where to find her, he demanded. Let me end this. The fox tilted its head again, the faintest trace of a smile on its sharp muzzle. You do not find Gullveig. No, she finds you. When you are ready, she will appear. Until then, you must follow the signs. It turned and began to walk deeper into the forest. Sten hesitated, glancing back toward the way he had come. The faintest light still flickered in that direction, a reminder of the safety he had left behind. But Solveig's pale face flashed in his mind, and he knew there was no turning back. So, he followed the fox. As they moved deeper into the forest, the air grew heavier, the whispers louder. The fox stopped suddenly at an ancient altar, its stone surface etched with runes that glowed faintly in the dim light. The whispers grew deafening here, and Sten clutched his pendant to steady himself. This is her mark, the fox said, its voice barely audible above the din. Her power courses through these stones, feeding the corruption that spreads through your land. Destroy it. Sten stepped forward, raising his sword. The runes flared, and a voice, soft, melodic, and terrible, filled the air. It was Gullveig herself. Do you think to defy me, child of men? Your blood calls to me. Your strength will falter, and your soul will be mine. Sten hesitated, the weight of her words pressing down on him. The fox barked sharply, breaking the spell. Strike now, or be lost. With a roar, Sten brought his sword down on the altar. The runes shattered, and a surge of energy burst forth, throwing him backward. The whispers ceased, leaving only silence. When Sten stood, the fox was watching him with approval. A small victory, but the path ahead will not be so kind. Steel yourself, warrior. The worst is yet to come. Chapter 3. The Sorceress's Bargain. The deeper Sten journeyed into the Shadow Forest, the more it became clear that he was no longer walking through a natural realm. The ground beneath his feet pulsed faintly, as though alive, and the air shimmered with a sickly, greenish light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The fox padded ahead, silent but purposeful, its white fur a beacon in the gloom. The forest fights to keep you out, the fox said without turning. You've disturbed her, and she knows you're coming. She? Sten asked, though he already knew the answer. Gullveig, the fox replied. Her power has seeped into the roots of this place. The further you go, the more her influence will try to twist your mind. Be vigilant. Sten nodded grimly. He had already felt the pull of her magic, whispers clawing at the edges of his thoughts. They spoke of failure, of the futility of his quest. Worse, they spoke of Solveig, her voice among them, weak and pleading. Save me, Sten, she whispered in his mind. Why haven't you saved me? He shook his head, gripping the pendant at his neck. You won't take me that easily, he muttered under his breath. The forest opened suddenly into a clearing. At its center loomed a great tree, its roots tangled and enormous, digging deep into the ground. The tree's bark was blackened and cracked, as if burned from within, and its branches were bare save for glimmering strands of silver thread that hung like cobwebs. Here, the fox said, stopping. This is the threshold. The threshold to what? Sten asked, his voice tight. To her domain, the fox replied. Beyond this tree lies the heart of her power. But beware, crossing this threshold is a choice, one that cannot be undone. If you enter, she will know you are there, and she will try to break you. I'm not turning back, Sten said, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sword. The fox regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. Then may your light hold. Sten stepped forward, the pendant at his neck glowing faintly as he crossed beneath the tree's blackened branches. The air shifted immediately. It grew colder, heavier, and the silver threads began to hum softly, their vibration echoing in his bones. The world beyond the tree was like a warped reflection of the forest he had left behind. The trees here were hollow, their trunks twisted into screaming faces, and the ground was littered with bones, human and otherwise. A faint mist clung to everything, carrying with it a metallic tang that stung Sten's nostrils. And there, at the center of it all, stood Gullveig. She was beautiful in a way that was almost painful to behold, her golden hair flowing like liquid sunlight despite the darkness around her. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and her lips curved into a smile that promised both delight and ruin. She wore a gown of shimmering black, the fabric shifting like smoke. Ah, she said, her voice smooth and melodious. The warrior from Skalgard. How bold of you to come so far. Release my sister, Sten said, stepping forward. Release my village. Gullveig tilted her head, amused. Your sister. Your village. She laughed, a sound like shattering glass. Do you truly think this is about them? No, mortal. This is about far more than your little hamlet. She stepped closer, her movements graceful and predatory. But I am not without mercy, she said, her tone softening. I see the strength in you, Sten, the fire in your soul. It is no accident that you've come this far. Her golden eyes locked onto his, and Sten felt the world tilt around him. Her presence was overwhelming, filling the air with a weight that pressed down on his chest. You're of my blood, she said, her voice low and hypnotic. You feel it, don't you? The magic stirring in your veins, the power that calls to you. Sten's heart pounded as her words washed over him. He could feel it, the faint hum beneath his skin, the pull of something ancient and dark. I'm nothing like you, he said, his voice strained. Gullveig's smile widened. But you could be. Join me, Sten. Embrace the power that is your birthright. Together we could undo the gods' tyranny and create a new order. I can save your sister, your village, everything you hold dear. All you have to do is kneel. Her words wrapped around him like a net, tempting and terrible. Visions flashed before his eyes, Solveig restored and smiling, the village fields green and thriving. A future where he was no longer a man, but a king standing beside Gullveig as they remade the realms. But then he saw the cost. He saw himself twisted, consumed by the darkness he sought to fight. He saw his hands stained with the blood of those he loved. No, he said, his voice firm. I will not become you. Gullveig's smile vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp fury. Then you will die, she said, her voice like ice. With a wave of her hand, the shadows around her surged, forming into monstrous shapes, wolves with too many eyes, serpents of smoke, and wraiths even more twisted than the ones he had faced before. Sten raised his sword, his heart pounding. The battle had begun. Chapter 4. Beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. The shadows surged forward, a tide of nightmare creatures pouring from Gullveig's command. Sten's sword flashed in the dim light as he met them head-on, each strike cutting through their shifting forms. Yet for every one that fell, two more emerged, their claws raking at him, their eyes burning with malice. The pendant at his neck glowed fiercely, its warmth a small solace against the cold tide of Gullveig's magic. The fox's words echoed in his mind. Shadows thrive on despair. Sten gritted his teeth, refusing to let fear take hold. His purpose was clear, his will unshaken. "You cannot win," Gullveig said, her voice resonating through the clearing like a dirge. She moved closer, her golden hair glowing like a halo of fire. "Your strength is nothing against the power of the void. Yield, Sten. It is your destiny." "I make my own destiny," Sten growled, his blade cutting through a serpent of smoke that lunged at him. But as the battle raged on, his body began to falter. His arms ached, his breaths came ragged, and blood seeped from countless small wounds. The creatures pressed in, their claws tearing at his defenses, and Gullveig's laughter filled the air, mocking his every effort. "Do you see now?" she said, stepping forward. "You cannot resist me. Your blood is mine, your strength mine, your very soul." "Enough." The fox's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. It darted into the fray, its white fur glowing with a radiant light that sent the shadows recoiling. The creatures hesitated, their forms wavering, and Sten took the opening to strike again, driving them back. The fox turned to him, its golden eyes blazing. "You cannot fight her magic with steel alone. Use the strength within you. Use the light." Sten hesitated, his grip tightening on his sword. "I don't know how." "You do," the fox said firmly. "It has been with you all along. Trust it." Gullveig's fury boiled over. "You dare meddle in my domain, little spirit." She raised her hand, and the ground beneath the fox cracked and split, black tendrils shooting out to ensnare it. The fox yelped as the tendrils closed around it, dragging it down. Sten surged forward, but the creatures swarmed him, holding him back as Gullveig turned her wrath on him fully. "Now, warrior," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Let me show you the truth of your bloodline." Her golden eyes locked onto his, and the world around him shifted. He was no longer in the clearing, but standing in a vast void, surrounded by flickering images of the past. He saw his ancestors kneeling before Gullveig, their faces twisted with greed and desperation as they accepted her dark gift. He saw the magic coursing through their veins, binding them to her forever. "You are mine, Sten," she said, her form towering over him. "You cannot escape what you are. Join me, and you will know power beyond your dreams." Sten's heart thundered in his chest. The vision was overwhelming, the pull of her magic nearly suffocating. But then he remembered Solveig's face, the light in her eyes before the sickness had taken her. He remembered the laughter of the villagers, the warmth of the hearth, the simple joys of home. These were the things Gullveig's darkness could never touch. "You're wrong," he said, his voice steady. "I am not yours. I am not defined by your magic, nor by my ancestors' choices. I am defined by my own." The pendant around his neck flared with light, and the void shattered. Sten found himself back in the clearing, Gullveig staggering back as the light burned her skin. "No," she shrieked, her beauty twisting into something monstrous. "You dare defy me." Sten seized the moment. The light within him surged, pouring through the pendant and into his sword. The blade glowed with golden fire as he raised it high, driving it into the ground at the base of the blackened tree. The earth trembled, and cracks of light spread outward, consuming the shadows and tearing through Gullveig's domain. Gullveig screamed as the light engulfed her, her form dissolving into ash. The creatures vanished, the corrupted trees splintered, and the sickly mist dissipated. The forest was silent once more. Sten dropped to his knees, his strength spent. The fox reappeared beside him, battered but alive, its eyes filled with quiet pride. "You've done it," the fox said softly. Her shadow is banished. Sten looked up, the light of dawn breaking through the trees. Is it over? For now, the fox replied. But shadows linger, even when the source is gone. Remember this, warrior. The light within you is your greatest weapon. Hold it close. Epilogue. The Light of Skalgard. When Sten returned to Skalgard, he found the village transformed. The crops were green, the rivers clear, and the people's spirits restored. Solveig greeted him at the edge of the village, her eyes bright and full of life. You kept your promise, she said, tears streaming down her face. Sten embraced her, the weight of his journey lifting at last. Yet in the quiet moments that followed, he often found himself gazing toward the forest, where the faintest whispers still lingered on the wind. The villagers sang of Sten's courage, his light against the Shadow of Gullveig. But Sten knew the battle against darkness was never truly over. And with that, we say goodbye for this time. Thank you for listening to our story, The Shadow of Gullveig, A Sorceress' Revenge.